Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Sunday Feast class for ISKCON Portland. Uh, and let's begin by reciting the Mangalacharan prayers, and then we will have a discussion. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. So I don't have a specific verse from the Bhagavad Gita today, but of course, as you will see, the discussion will focus on topics from, or a particular topic from the Bhagavad Gita very strongly. And the topic is that is Lord Krishna's nature material or spiritual? That is largely the topic, and I'll share with you how this topic came to my mind and why I was motivated to discuss this topic. So one of the people asked me a question. They're reading Bhagavad Gita and have some understanding from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and probably have some other understanding as well from other places. They might have undergone some other classes or read some books on the Vedanta or other Vedic topics. And the question one such person asked me is that, what is the meaning of Saguna and Nirguna? And is it, and because these words are used often in the Vedic literatures, and is it the same as the personal and impersonal understanding of the absolute truth? Or is it the same as the manifested and unmanifested understanding of the absolute truth? Saguna being the personal and Nirguna being the impersonal, or Saguna being the manifested and Nirguna being the unmanifested understanding of the absolute truth. So that was the question that was posed, and therefore that gives rise to another question, that if nirguna refers to um, one of the understandings of the absolute truth, which is the unmanifested or the impersonal understandings, does it mean that Krishna, who is the absolute truth, is he without any qualities, nirguna? And from a general understanding, everybody kind of says guna means qualities and nirguna means without qualities. We always, those who are familiar with little bit of Hindi will say, uske gun kaise hain, uske gun lakshan. So gun lakshan अच्छे हैं या gun lakshan खराब हैं, means the gunas are what kind of qualities does this person have, good qualities or bad qualities. And but nirguna means without qualities, no qualities at all. So that means the Lord has no qualities. He is without qualities. So that is the understanding that someone has, or this is the conclusion, or this is the doubt that somebody posed. And I sort of made some notes, and I thought this may be an interesting discussion for all of us as well. And of course, I got a chance to think about this topic and prepare some, notes on it. And it was a very enjoyable exercise for me as well, to pick one topic and then assemble some notes by referring to Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures, and clarifying my own understanding first before I am able to explain it with conviction, with a sense that I am myself convinced of what I am trying to say, and then be able to share it with others. So that process of convincing myself, of course, that basic conviction is there, that yes, of course, the Lord has such wonderful qualities. But now let's go and look at the scriptures. Let's go and look at actually what is said in the scriptures and be able to put it together in such a way that I can clearly communicate it to others. There is one thing called conviction in the heart, and there is another thing called being able to substantiate it and communicate it to someone else. For our own conviction, we may not need a lot of justification, a lot of substantiation. Like, in a court of law, a judge may say, oh, this person is criminal. But, somebody may think, in my heart of heart, I know he is a good person. And the whole world may think otherwise, but there is something called conviction where justification is not needed. And we have all experienced such examples. So conviction is different. You don't need a lot of justification for that. But when you want to communicate to others, then building a body of justification is a good thing. And it only cements our own conviction further. So that's the good thing. Plus, you can share it with others and hopefully convince them as well. So coming back to that topic of, so again, the point of saying that was not to say that after doing this whole reading and understanding from Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures, then I got convinced. And I can see all of you that are on the call are also not in that position where you have a doubt. But that's why I was sharing this, that it's an enjoyable process to go through the references, putting together some justifications, and it helps us to enjoy that process, and as a byproduct we can communicate it to others as well, even though the strong initial conviction already exists. So when we are interested, or when we want to talk about the topic of saguna and nirguna, there is a common word between saguna and nirguna, and that is guna. And sa and nir just means with and without. There are two meanings of sa. Sa could mean good, and then typically the acronym that is used is dur. So what's the word which has, so it's not sa, it's su. So there are so many words, nothing is coming in my mind right now. Maybe one of you can help me, but
Sulabha and Durlabha, Prabhu.
sulabha and durlabha, very good, thank you. So which means one is very easy to accomplish, durlabh means very hard to accomplish. So su and du, but sa and nir means with and without. So that is one thing. But the common part is guna. So let us look at what is the meaning of guna, and then we can discuss what is saguna and nirguna. So according to Bhagavad Gita, guna means material modes of nature. Nature is material. I mean, when I say nature, I doesn't nature again. It's a lot of it is within the language, but nature, as in prakriti, the material nature, the universe that we see around it, the elements that form the universe, they are material in nature, as contrast to something else called spiritual. So the gunas are the material qualities, the modes of material nature, or the qualities that form, are the fundamental building block of material nature or prakriti. That is what guna means as per Bhagavad Gita. So this is a very important point as well, that we must base, to have a discussion, we must base our understanding on some foundation. Otherwise, what is guna? Guna is just a word. We can have an endless debate on what is the meaning of guna itself. And that's what we have narrowed down our discussion to, that let's understand what is guna. Then we will understand saguna and nirguna. First, we must understand guna for that. So how do we understand guna? Guna is just a word. You can make up a meaning. Guna means football. And, you can say saguna means with a football and nirguna means without a football. And then we can have an endless debate whether guna means material modes or does it mean football. And there is no resolution. We'll have an endless debate and we'll talk past each other. So that is pointless. And so if one wants to make up their own meaning of the word guna, then we are saying that is out of the scope of the discussion. So we will limit our discussion to the understanding from Vedic texts, and specifically the Bhagavad Gita. And the other thing is that, which is very important, and I'm going through it in a very logical way, or trying to, at least, that's how I kind of structured my own thoughts, is that when you apply the word guna and attach the saguna or nirguna, the meaning of the word guna cannot change then, right? You cannot say that in saguna, the word guna means a football, and in nirguna, the word guna means an apple. You cannot have two different meanings of the word guna simply when it is attached to a particular attribute. That guna has to mean the same thing, and then only we can have further discussion. So we have established two things. The first thing that we have established is that we have to understand the meaning of a word based on certain foundational knowledge. And we are saying that within the scope of this discussion, that body of knowledge is the Bhagavad Gita. And the second thing that we are saying is that when we use the word and we attach some attributes to it, we cannot, change the meaning of the root word itself. And simply by the notion of what attributes we attach to it, we can choose to give some meaning in one scenario and completely different meaning in another scenario. That is not rational. That doesn't make sense. Uh, it's not something we will advocate or we will agree to as part of this discussion. So we have to have the same meaning of the word guna, even whether you apply it to sa or nir. And that, these are two very logical points, but we have to, that's how we build our argument based on these certain axioms of logic. Okay. So now let us look at what is guna according to Bhagavad Gita. And then we will apply this sa and nir on top of it. So, very nicely in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna has explained so many places. I have like so many references that if I start going through that, it will take more than 2 hours. So, and we have only 30 minutes, 40 minutes left. So I'll pick some key references and I will share my screen and I will show you from Bhagavad Gita what is the meaning of guna. So all of you are very familiar with Veda base. So we start from our fundamental reference Veda base, which is the life and soul of all those who are trying to learn from the Vedas, and the understanding that is given to us by our wonderful Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. So we'll go to Veda base, we'll go to Bhagavad Gita, we'll go to chapter 18. Oh, am I sharing my screen?
Yes, Prabhu, we can see your screen.
You can see my screen. Okay, great. So we will go to verse number 18.41. And I have my book here. I feel more comfortable reading from the book, but I'm sharing so that all of you can also have a look. So I'll read the verse and the translation, and I'll focus on some key points in the verse. Brahmana kshatriya vishan shudranam cha parantapa karmani pravibhaktani swabhava prabhavair gunaihi. Translation by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charnaravind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with the material modes, O chastiser of the enemy. So Lord Krishna is describing that these four varnas, these four categories of classes of people. Again, I'm shying away from using the word caste. It is meaning the caste, but it gives a negative connotation, caste system and all that. But once we share with people that, everybody thinks, oh, this caste system is like a dark spot on the Indian culture. It is only a dark spot when you apply it to the castes as being, you put somebody in a box based on their birth, and therefore that's something that cannot be changed for their entire life. That's not what is the varna. These four varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, are based on the qualities and the work, the activities of a person, and which can very well be changed. So it's a system based on meritocracy, not on birth, and which is a very well-founded idea, at least even in the Western civilization or the Western culture. Everything is based on meritocracy. You can't have you wouldn't appoint me to be the judge of the Supreme Court. The president won't, nominate me. The Senate won't approve me. I don't have the qualifications. I can't even judge a simple disagreement or a fight between my two kids, when they fight over something. What am I going to resolve or judge the disputes based on some very, very complex topics? So I have no qualification, and therefore I don't get that particular title. So these varnas are titles based on one's qualifications or qualities and activities. I can be a computer engineer. I am qualified for that a little bit. I have done studies and I have some activities. For that, I am qualified. You wouldn't, Intel will not bring a Supreme Court justice to do the kind of work that I am doing, which is building computer chips. So I cannot do their work, they cannot do my work. And it's each of us is based on our qualities and our activities. So that is Varna. And that is what is being said here. And it is, this verse says, Karmani prabhibhaktani swabhava prabhavair gunaihi. So the word guna is coming there and is saying that these Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with their material modes, O chastiser of the enemy. So these Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra are, of course, the categories of people in the material world. Even an impersonalist will agree that these categories are worldly, are in the material world. They don't apply to living entities once they have attained liberation, whether they merge into the Supreme or whatever. They will all also agree that these categories do not apply there. And the word guna, swabhava prabhavair gunaihi. So according to their swabhava, according to their own nature, swabhav, as we all understand, is our nature. Uska swabhav अच्छा है, उसका स्वभाव खराब है. People say, उसका स्वभाव तो बहुत अच्छा है, वो तो बहुत अच्छे nature का है. So swabhav means nature, means his own characteristics, his own qualities, his whole attitude, and all those things is part of the swabhava, which comes from one's behavior and one's association of the gunas, the material modes. So the point is that these modes are, according to this verse, appear to be material in nature because it is being related to these four varnas. Now, another verse let's look at and see how these material modes or how these varnas came into being. And again, what is the classification of these varnas? So we will go to another verse from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, a very famous one, 4.13. So we'll go to 4.13 and we will show here from this verse, which says, Chatur Varnyam Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha Tasya Kartaram Apimam Vidhi Akartaram Avyayam. So here Lord Krishna is saying in this verse that 4.13 that Chatur Varnyam Maya Shrishtam. So these four varnas, and here he has not used that term, the four terms, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, but that's what it is referring to, the four varnas. Maya Shrishtam, I have created these. So that is the first thing. They have been created by Krishna. The second point is Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. So again, the word Guna is coming. So based on the Guna and Karma of a living entity, Vibhagashaha, these have been divided. Vibhaga. Bhag means to divide. Vibhaga means categories. So I have categorized the natures and qualities into these four categories. And depending on whatever nature a person has, he will fall into those categories. So that's the two things he's saying. I have created it, and what's the basis of the creation based on the guna and karma. So again, the guna is referring to these varnas, which are material. There is no guna, there is no varnas in the spiritual understanding, whether personal or impersonal. That much at least they agree on. Next line is very important. Tasya kartaram apimam vidhi akartaram avyayam. What it means is that although apimam means although I have created these, you may know vidhi akartaram avyayam. I'll focus on the word avyayam, unchangeable. So Lord Krishna is using the word although. So he's saying, I have created these varnas. So Bhagavad Gita needs to be understood a little bit in the contextual way. I have created these varnas. However, I I am avyayam, I am unchangeable. So in the material world, things change. And one, based on his qualities, based on his work, one can change. One can elevate or one can go down. Just like in our cases in the material world, you go do good work, you get promoted from one uh, position to the next position to the next position based if you're doing well, you get a promotion. So like that, or if you don't do well, you'll get fired, or whatever may be the case. So you go up and you go down, and that is also material, and that is changing. These are changes, but Krishna is saying he is avyayam, which means he is unchangeable. So which means he is somehow not, he's the creator, but he doesn't change. So we get the feeling, or we get the impression, that Krishna is somehow not, these modes don't apply to Krishna. And when I say Krishna, he's the speaker of Bhagavad Gita. So when he says karta ham, or karta ham iti manyate, or tasya karta ram api mam, so I am the creator, or and I am unchangeable. Mam means he's referring to himself. So he's unchangeable, which gets the feeling that he is somehow not changing, whereas somebody who is within these modes can switch around, can change. Okay, so that thing. Then let's go to another verse, which is quickly 3.27, which is another very famous verse. And here Lord Krishna is saying, Prakriteha kriyamanani gunakarmani sarvashaha ahankara vimhudatma karta aham iti manyate. So the translation is, the spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So prakriteha kriyamanani, that this under the influence of prakriti. Now what we are trying to do is attach the word prakriti to the gunas. Now again, everybody understands prakriti means material nature. This jagat, or this prakriti, that is material nature. So prakriti is the prakrite kriyamanani, out of the prakriti, out of the material nature. And what are the qualities of the material nature? Guna karmani sarvashaha. So one is conditioned by these gunas, and in this prakriti. So when whoever is within this prakriti. Now of course Lord Krishna is also coming down, and Lord Rama and all the other incarnations of this absolute truth, they are coming down on this material planet, on this world. So one can still say, yes, they are present in the material world. We'll see, but at least we are talking right now of the material world itself is prakriti. And this prakriti has the capability to condition one and influence it by the gunas that are the building blocks of the prakriti. And because of this influence by the gunas, one gets ahankara. What ahankara does he get? That I am the doer. So ahankara is the result of the conditioning by the modes. So everybody understands ahankara is not a good thing. Even the impersonalist understanding is, they will never say ahankara is good. Ahankara means it's something that needs to be avoided, that is something to be removed from our swabhava. But what is the source of the ahankara? Guna. So which again means guna is something material, because ahankara is something material. It is asat. It is undesirable. So how can guna be spiritual? The guna is material, because only a material thing can give rise to a material bad quality, such as ahankara. And this ahankara bewilders the living entity. So because this ahankara bewilders the Ahankar is undesirable. So again, we see that the gunas are material in nature. Finally, we will look at two verses which tie all of this together. And those two verses are in chapter 7, a beautiful chapter, 7.13 and 7.14. So what does Lord Krishna say in 7.13? So in 7.13, Lord Krishna is saying, Tribhir Gunamair Bhavair Ibhi Sarvam Idam Jagat Mohitam Nabhijanati Mamebhyah Param Avyayam. The translation is deluded by these three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. The whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. So he's clearly saying here that Lord Krishna is saying that I am above the modes. So he is above the modes and he is inexhaustible. Param Avyayam. So again, the word Avyayam is coming, which means he's unchangeable. In that previous verse, Avyayam was unchangeable. Here it is inexhaustible. But the meaning is the root meaning is the same, which is that Lord Krishna is above the modes and he does not change based on these material modes. And in the very next verse, Lord Krishna says how to get out of these modes. This is a very, very, very famous verse. Daivihi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mam eva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. That these modes, gunamayi, is Maya. Maya is composed of the gunas. The gunas are the cause of the Maya, or the energy of Krishna, which give the rise to this material world, which is Maya. So Daivi hi esha gunamayi. So gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. This Maya is gunamayi, is full of the gunas, is consisting of these modes. And next line he says, if you want to get out of this, so assuming that we still say that the material world is material and is giving rise to various good and bad things. We talked about ahankara, we talked about the four categories, and you go up or you go down based on your activities and qualities. So when you go up or down based on your activities and qualities means there is good and bad, up or down. Otherwise, on what basis would you go up or down? So when you go up, it means you did something good. When you go down, it means you didn't do something good. So the change has to be based on certain criteria, and criteria has to distinguish, has to discriminate. And when you use the word discriminate, there has to be something good or desirable and something bad or undesirable. So these qualities or these gunas are basically something that can be discriminated upon. There it can be you can say that there are good qualities and bad qualities, and that is the duality, and that is what is referred to in the previous verse as mohitam na abhijanati. These create the moha, which means the duality, the illusion of duality. So how do you get out of this? So this is something undesirable. How do you get out of it? Mam eva ye prapadyante. Prapadyante means to surrender. So who to surrender to? Mam, to Krishna. So by surrendering to Krishna, Maya metam tarantite. This Maya, which was there in the previous line, Mama Maya Duratyaya, this was very hard to cross or very hard to overcome, Duratyaya. You can cross it, how? Mam eva ye prapadyante. Then you can cross it, Maya metam tarantite. Taranti means to cross. So you are surrendering to Mam, to Krishna, and then you can cross. Which means also, based on the previous verse, also, Krishna has to be above the modes. It's like you are drowning. How can another person who is drowning save a drowning person? That is not possible. Or if you have fallen into the well and there is another person who is also inside the well, that person cannot save it. You have to be outside the well, then you can throw a rope and pull up the other person. Or if you are in a boat, you can save the drowning person. So you have to be in a boat, which means you have to be in a higher position than the one who is drowning or who is fallen into the well. And that higher person is Mam. Krishna is saying, Mam eva ye prapadyante. By surrendering to me in love. This is not the surrender like at gunpoint, like one army surrenders to the other after being defeated. Not like that. Demons surrender like that, but devotees don't surrender like that. They surrender in love, just like a child surrenders to a father or a mother. So through that kind of surrender, you can cross it, which means that Mam has to be above the Maya, above these gunas. So we have seen all these points, and there are more references which I have to skip, very beautiful references, but which I have to skip in the interest of time. But through all this discussion, we have established two things very clearly, and I hope you will be able to appreciate, or you will be able to be fully convinced that we have established two aspects. Point number one is that these gunas are material in nature. These gunas are not spiritual, correct? Why are they? Just to review or revise, why are they material in nature? Because they give rise to something which is undesirable, asat. Lord Krishna says, if you're interested, you can look at 13.22, where Lord says that these material modes give rise to sat and asat, which means desirable and undesirable things, good and bad things, both. So these are material in nature. They give rise to ahankar, they bind you, they are something that you need to be taken out of. Duratyaya, this Maya is Duratyaya, very hard to overcome, and this Maya is composed of Gunamayi, it's full of the gunas. So all these things convince or justify, let me just not use the word convince, because there still may be people who may not be convinced even after telling so many things, they're still unconvinced. That's okay. But these are the justifications that substantiate the argument that gunas are material in nature. And the second point that we have established is that God or Krishna is above the gunas, right? By this particular verse that we are sharing, that Mam eva ye prapadyante, by surrendering to me, you can cross Maya metam tarantite, you can cross this Maya. Or I am avyayam, I am unchangeable, and I am above the modes. I have created the modes. So he is the creator, but he is not the one on whom these modes apply. So very clearly in Bhagavad Gita, Lord is saying this, that he is not under the influence of the gunas, of these material modes. Okay, so that is what we have established about guna. Once again, that the gunas are material in nature and Krishna or God is above these modes. Okay, so that is the meaning of guna. And again, like I said, you can make it mean whatever you want. That's your problem. You can say guna means football. Fine, then we don't have any basis for discussion. But based on Bhagavad Gita, guna means this. Now let us apply saguna and nirguna. Now again, we cannot change the meaning of guna just by adding the sa or nir. Guna has to still mean the same thing. All we are getting to do is add the sa or the nir. You cannot say that when I add sa, guna means apple, and when I add nir, guna means orange. That is cheating. That's like, in the first innings of the cricket match, you have one set of rules, and in the second innings for another team, you have different set of rules. You don't do that in a match, right? So the rules are exactly the same whether you are in the first innings or the second innings. So whether you apply sa or nir, the meaning of guna cannot change. So saguna therefore means with material qualities, and nirguna means without material qualities. Okay, so we started off by saying that guna could mean qualities, but the big thing that we added in front of the word quality is material. So material qualities. And therefore Krishna, through the other understanding of the gunas, that he's above the gunas, whatever type of guna, sa or nir, sat or asat, he is above. That means he neither has saguna nor nirguna, which means he neither has any material, um, uh, neither is he with any material qualities, and he is without any material qualities. He has no material qualities, and he does not, basically, he does not have any gunas. He's above the gunas. So, which means that he is basically nirguna, without material qualities. Who is saguna? We are saguna as long as we are in our material bodies. Then we are saguna. If you look at the verse 13.15, you will see that in our spiritual position, 13 and then the 15th verse is talking about the well, let me go to 13.22 first, the living entity. So the living entity is also without material qualities. He is also nirguna, but only the spirit soul. As long as he is covered by the material body, he is saguna. So this, I'll just, in the interest of time, go through the translation. The living entity in the material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of material nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil, sat and asat, amongst the various species. So, the living entity, as long as he is in this material world, the living entity in reality is nirguna, without material qualities, but by his presence in the material world, by having this material body, he is demonstrating these, or he is influenced by these gunas, and he is going through the various species, sat and asat, yoni, janmashu. Now, the spiritual, the Paramatma, and that's where we go to 13.15. He is nirguna. This is the only place in the Bhagavad Gita where the word nirgunam is used, where Lord Krishna is saying that the Paramatma is without any material qualities. So he is nirgunam. The super soul is the original source of all the senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time he is the master of the modes of material nature. So he transcends the modes of material nature, which means he is nirguna, but he's nirguna where guna means material modes. So he's beyond the material modes. He's nirguna, plus another important thing is he's guna bhoktra. Guna bhoktra means he's the enjoyer of gunas, of those who out of their love at a material level are expressing their love towards Krishna. So he is the enjoyer, he is the guna, he is the master of all the modes. And for devotees, when they are expressing their love, even at a material level, he enjoys that, he very much likes that. And of course, he is the reciprocator of all good and bad activities for us. If we do bad activities, by his law of karma, we get sinful reactions and so on. So he is reciprocating with everyone, but this we can understand better where he is the enjoyer of all our offerings, even though our offerings may be at a material level. So, how can a person without gunas? Now we are going into the next part of the discussion, that the Lord is nirguna, which means without material qualities. But does he have spiritual qualities? Now, I'm not going to use the word guna for that, because we have established, as per Bhagavad Gita, guna means material qualities. So I'll just use the word spiritual qualities. Okay. So, and the word used in Bhagavad Gita is avyayam. And he says, Janma karma cha me divyam, that his birth and his activities, may means my, Janma karma cha me divyam, my birth and my activities are divyam, are transcendental. So the, Krishna has qualities, but they are not material, they are spiritual. And that is why he can reciprocate with us when we, out of our love, offer, our love to him. He can enjoy that. If he was completely devoid of any qualities, material or spiritual, how can that person enjoy or reciprocate with anyone else? So, the point that now we are trying to establish or justify is that the Lord has qualities. He is not nirguna, as in like totality, no qualities at all. He is nirguna only with respect to not having material qualities. He absolutely has so many spiritual qualities. And just one more verse from the Bhagavad Gita to show that. And these are two very, very important verses. We will probably just focus on 7.24, where Krishna says that avyaktam vyaktim apannam manyate mam abuddhayah param bhavam ajananto mam avyayam anuttamam. So he's saying that avyaktam, thinking that I was avyakta, unmanifest. That was part of the question. Does unmanifest mean nirguna? So Krishna is actually saying that those who think that my original position was avyaktam, unmanifest, and now I have become a vyakti. Vyakti means person. We all know that. Vyaktim apannam. Apannam means to take the vyakti form. And originally I was avyaktam. If somebody thinks like that, what is Krishna calling him? Abuddhayam. Manyate means I consider him, I consider him to be abuddhayam. Abuddhi. Abuddhi means without intelligence or unintelligent. So, and he's saying param bhavam ajananto. He does not know my param bhavam, my absolute supreme nature, that I am mam avyayam. Again, the word avyayam is coming, and anuttamam, the finest, the best, the most perfect. So the word avyayam is coming so many times. So Krishna is absolutely saying that, and we all know Vyakti as a material person, you and I have these qualities, have these gunas, the material qualities. So Krishna is clearly refuting this point that I only have qualities if you think that I am a human being or like a Vyakti. If that's how you think, you are unintelligent. Which means that Krishna demonstrates these qualities even in his avyayam form, even in his spiritual form. Janma karma cha me divyam. He's saying my activities, karma, are divya, are transcendental, are spiritual in nature. So Krishna absolutely has qualities. And those qualities are spiritual in nature. So Krishna is nirguna as far as material qualities are concerned, but he is saguna as far as spiritual qualities are considered. And that's why, and here we are changing the meaning of the word guna. Nirguna means material qualities and saguna means spiritual qualities. Therefore, we want to stay away from attaching these words saguna to Krishna, because we are changing the meaning of the word guna. But all we would like to say is that Krishna absolutely has qualities, but they are of spiritual nature. And we don't want to say saguna, because then that's using our own argument against ourselves. We don't want to do that. So Krishna has qualities. I'll just say it in English. I won't use a Sanskrit word like saguna. In English, Krishna absolutely has qualities, wonderful qualities, and but they are spiritual in nature, and that is the avyayam, that is the anuttamam, the most perfect, the best understanding of Krishna that we can get. And there are many other places in the Bhagavad Gita, if we read nicely Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, where this has been explained. And also, finally, I will end with a very wonderful section in Srila Rupa Goswami's wonderful text, which Srila Prabhupada told all his disciples and anybody who is following Srila Prabhupada to read this book called Nectar of Devotion. So I will just show you here, Nectar of Devotion. This is again on Vedabase. You click on library, and if you go to the first part of Vedabase, you will just see more books here. So you click on more books, then you will see this expanded library, and within that you go to Nectar of Devotion, and chapter numbers 21 and 22, as you can see, describe qualities of Sri Krishna. So if you simply translate in Hindi, quality means guna. So fine, we can say guna, but these are the spiritual qualities of Krishna, and there are 64 spiritual qualities that have been enumerated. There are unlimited spiritual qualities of Krishna. Krishna is not limited by the number 64 at all. But Srila Rupa Goswami, for our understanding, because our minds are limited, we cannot fathom unlimited qualities. So he has given 64 principal qualities of Lord Krishna. And these are split into these two chapters. We won't obviously be going through these two chapters in any detail, but very nicely Srila Prabhupada has given all these qualities, 1, 2, 3, 4, and all the way. If you go in the next chapter, you can read these 4 things, and this chapter ends with the 64 qualities. So you have 64 qualities. Out of these 64 qualities, living entities, jivas, can also develop. Like we said, you can get promoted. So we can develop 50, the first 50 qualities, even the jivas can develop, although in not as much quantity as Krishna, but in minute quantity. But we can develop qualities similar to Krishna. And in that way, if you focus on even one of those 50 or 2 of those 50 and try to develop them a little bit in your life, you'll become very dear to Krishna. So that is the process of becoming dear to Krishna, by developing such qualities. And you can see the remaining 14 is just not possible to develop. One of the qualities, for example, is omniscience, knowing everything. How can a living, even if you try, you cannot know everything. You cannot know what is in the mind of even the person sitting next to you, what to speak, to know what is in the mind of everybody in the whole universe. Krishna knows that. We cannot develop it in minute level. We cannot. So it is somewhere here. I forget which one it is. Somebody can help me, but all cognizant, 52. So he is all cognizant. He's aware of everything. We are not all cognizant. I don't know what's going on in the next room. So how can I be all cognizant? How can I know everything in the universe? So, but the first 50 qualities we can try to develop in a little honorable. We can be a little honorable. Supreme controller. We cannot control everything, but we can control ourselves, and we can influence others. We can try to give Krishna's message to others. Like this, we can exercise these or develop these qualities in minute quantity in ourselves, and that way we try to progress on the spiritual path, because these are spiritual quantities. Of course, honor, you can say, is a material quality. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, one who is gunatita, who is beyond these modes, neither cares for honor nor dishonor. But here, that is not that kind of honor full of pride. This is the honor that one gets by being a devotee in a devotional mindset. So like that, we can develop these spiritual qualities in small quantity. But the point is, Krishna absolutely has spiritual qualities. He is completely devoid of material qualities. And in that sense, he is nirguna. So it is absolutely correct that Krishna is nirguna, but it doesn't mean devoid of any qualities. So that is the first question that was asked. That is, it's same as nirguna means impersonal understanding. No, Krishna is having qualities, and Krishna is not. Um, Guna means manifested, and nirguna means unmanifested. That's also not correct. Nirguna is also referring to the material level. Krishna is both manifest and unmanifest. Both understandings are correct. If you read the first part of 12th chapter, we won't go into the details. You will see that the personal understanding is the best and the easiest. Therefore, for all the living entities, the best process is to follow Krishna's personal understanding. And through the personal form, by worshiping, by putting our minds, by glorifying the personal form of the Lord, we can all make very quick spiritual progress. So I will end there. And I thank whoever asked this question for giving me this opportunity to think about this topic. And I enjoyed it very much to discuss and prepare and my notes on this topic. I can see if there are any questions, comments, reflections, or corrections.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, this is Vivek. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for this enlightening lecture, Prabhuji. I had a question about material modes. So in this class, you've used in this discussion, we've used modes and qualities interchangeably. So when Krishna talks about the modes of material nature, are they exactly are are they encompassing the qualities as well, the material qualities as well? Because we've used them interchangeably.
Yes. So the mode, yes. So we had covered this in the earlier part of the lecture. The modes are the gunas. Guna in Hindi or in general language, we mean quality. But it's a derived understanding. According to Bhagavad Gita, the direct understanding of modes is, or of guna, is material modes, which is uh, Sat Guna, Rajo Guna, and Tamo Guna, mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. That in turn, in various proportions, it is mixed. And within a living entity, due to his conditioning, the proportions in which it is mixed gives rise to his swabhava, and that is his nature, or what the normal use of the word guna that we use generally. He's having good gunas or bad gunas. So modes are the three modes, the three material modes: goodness, passion, ignorance, which give rise to swabhava, which give rise to one's nature, one's attitude, one's behavior, one's character.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji. And I have one last question. Can you, with an example, can you describe the difference between a spiritual quality and a material quality? For example, beauty.
So beauty is, as they say, in the eye of a beholder. That is, I can say, at a material level. I'll make it very short because Aarti time has started. And so what may look beautiful to someone may not look beautiful to someone else. Like a child, for a mother, her child is the most beautiful. Even if he is, unshaved or unclean or whatever, mother will always find her own child the most beautiful. Whereas someone else's child, okay, fine, nice, but not as beautiful as one's own child. But Krishna is is all beautiful, which means that if one really looks at the form of Krishna, then there is absolutely no way that he will not get completely mesmerized, completely like mad in love with Krishna. And there are examples that we have discussed in our Bhagavatam class series. like Parikshit Maharaj, as an embryo, he saw Krishna in the womb. As an embryo, how much knowledge can an embryo have? But when he saw Krishna in the womb, saving Parikshit Maharaj from the Brahmastra of Ashwatthama, his whole next life after he came out of the womb, he was searching for Parikshit, for Krishna, and that is why he's known as Parikshit. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.12.30. That's the name Parikshit given. So he was searching for that Krishna, which he saw as an embryo, because he was completely enchanted by the beauty of Krishna. Similarly, when Narad Muni, in his previous life, he got like a moment's view of Lord Narayana. And then in a moment, that view vanished. And then Lord Narayana told him through his sound that was simply to increase your hankering. And his rest of his entire life, he was simply continued to be enchanted, to be mesmerized by that view of Lord Narayana, which was so beautiful that he could not, forget that. So that is the ultimate, the all beautiful nature of Lord Krishna. Okay, great.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
We will stop here. Sorry for going a little over. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Satchidanand Dev Bhagwan ki jai.
Thank you, Pankaj Prabhu. Thank